You're listening to Indications by the Conference Board.
Welcome to the Conference Board's Indications podcast. Indications is a public podcast featuring our global roster of thought leaders. Topics range from economic growth and competitiveness to human capital, governance, sustainability, and beyond. Each episode is a serious conversation around data and insights that will keep you ahead of the curve in a turbulent world. I'm here with my colleague Lynn Franco, Senior Director of Economic Indicators and Surveys at the Conference Board. Welcome, Lynn. It's always great to speak with you.
Great to be back.
So let's discuss the most recent consumer confidence survey. Consumer confidence rose more than forecasters expected in February. What were some notable developments in the report?
I think it's good news. This is the second monthly increase, so it seems that we're on a positive trajectory. In particular, what we saw is the 3 monthly declines that we had experienced in the present situation reverse course. So I think this is a sign that some of the softening that we saw in Q4 didn't necessarily spill over into Q1 of 2021. Expectations decreased marginally, but overall consumers remain cautiously optimistic about the short-term outlook.
That sounds excellent. So what did the data tell us about the vaccine effect on confidence?
Well, I think we're seeing at least, no negative implications, from the recent resurgence that we saw in COVID. We're still waiting for more positive sentiment to sort of feed through as the vaccine rollout accelerates. But one point sort of worth noting is that we did see a little bit of an uptick in consumers' vacation plans, in particular travel to a foreign country and travel by air. So it looks like at least the vaccine is beginning to have some positive signs in terms of consumers' leisure activities.
That's truly amazing because indeed in-person services suffered quite precipitously during the pandemic. So it's really good news that people are looking to travel again and looking at vacations. Another question, do the data reflect the storms that we saw in the South and West or any changes in restrictions in activity in New York?
No, we don't see that as of yet. And that's actually a pretty interesting point here because if we take a look at what happened in particular in Texas and New York, we already saw a bit of a decline in consumer confidence in Texas. And this is likely to be exacerbated by the, recent events there. So trajectory there is probably downwards, whereas in New York, we saw a little bit of softening in confidence, but given the recent relaxing in restrictions, both in terms of dining and sporting events, we hopefully will begin to see an uptick in a recovery in that area.
Sounds fantastic. Did we see any differentiation in sentiment by age or income level or any other questions?
Well, I think what's interesting here, too, is if we sort of take a look at some of the other questions that we ask consumer confidence, in particular their expectations about the inflation rate, we did see an uptick. And I think this kind of correlates with what we're seeing in terms of gas prices increasing at the pump. So that's always sort of an easy barometer for consumers to gauge. And those have recently been upticking with probably an increase expected in this month and next as well.
Sure. Were there any differences in confidence by region or states apart from what we saw in Texas and New York?
Yes, in particular, we saw a nice bounce back in the Pacific region of over 30 points, and that really was led by the improvements that we're seeing in California. California back in December and January, confidence was well below 70. It's up to 100 now, basically because expectations have really picked up. In terms of the current conditions, the overall situation there still remains rather weak, but expectations are at least that California has turned the corner and better times are on the horizon.
Lynn, thank you so much for such great insights. This has been Indications from the Conference Board. If you enjoyed this podcast, you may listen to additional TCB offerings by going to www.conference-board.org/podcasts or find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
This has been Indications from the Conference Board.